And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith, just the two of us once again. My opening statement, the Tigers are trying to hang on to fourth place while the Red Wings pick up a minor league defenseman and stay at top and stay at 6 overall with the same number of the overall pick after the lottery. Isn't that exciting? First time in at least a few years. Ed, what's your opening statement?
If I were to have an opening statement, it would be to see what developments the Tigers are making this week in their rebuild to coincide with the Red Wings and their status with the draft lottery.
All right. Before we get started, we want to remind everyone that this show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Sign up with the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire, for Stables Media, and spread the word. The Viget Sports app, where great fans cover. Sign up with the referral code STABLES. So, got a few topics to talk about. First off, the Pistons hire former Michigan Wolverines men's basketball head coach John Beilein as their new director of player development. Ed, you're going to love this one. I graded an A+ in our What's Your Grade segment.
I would be likely to agree with you on that one, Taylor. It's really a no-brainer if you were to ask many people in terms of if you want to have a sharp enough mind that is not only on the lookout of up-and-coming talent that is already in the league, but those that have still yet to enter, that still may be considering whether it be they're in college, one-and-done pro, one-and-dones, or those that decide to stay in school long-term. I think that is the right mind that you need to look out for players of that talent, of that pool, of that depth, and around that age range of experience as well. So when you consider the fact that he's going to be doing this in a far different role than what he was doing when he was with Cleveland, I think he's in a far better spot, far better, whatever style, whether purpose he should have in this role, it suits him much better than when he was with the Cavaliers. So all those factors combined, yeah, I'd give this one an A+ as well.
Yeah, John Beilein is going to help the Pistons players develop better than they have like the past at least few years, maybe 10 years.
Yeah, I could see him. I could see him looking out not just of guys like Killian Hayes, they're on the roster now, but some of the up and coming young prospects that the Pistons may be in position to draft. One of them, given how they may go in their own draft lottery. So I think this was the right time in terms of this draft class of this year and those of upcoming future years as well. This is the right time to hire a guy of John Beilein with his caliber experience of noticing and developing and nurturing young collegiate level talent. This is the right time and place for him to hire him in this essentially same role without the pressure of him having to do all that and coach as well. So right spot, right hire, right move, right timing.
Yes, definitely. And it's about time they've hired him in some spot, especially developing players. About time the Pistons players started developing from here on forward. So that's Pistons already. The Red Wings, they stay at 6 overall after the 2021 NHL Draft Lottery. That was just earlier tonight, and it's first time in at least a few years since Ken Holland was their general manager that they stayed at a similar number with the same overall draft pick after a lottery. But since then, they have dropped every single year, and it's making me think the lottery should be permanently removed. But the Red Wings were lucky they didn't drop it all this time. They stayed at 6, and number 6 is still manageable. It's the third time in 4 years they've wound up with a 6 overall pick, which is at least manageable. Not quite great, but still good. Ed, what's your analogy on this?
Analogy on this one is it may not have been the spot that you wanted to see happen the most, but it's still the best position and best situation you have, as opposed to once again slipping to 7th or 8th or God forbid the 9th or 10th spot, knowing there are other teams plus the new expansion team from Seattle in the mix as well. So terms of what the odds were going into, I think the Red Wings had if anything, a much more higher percent chance of landing with the seventh overall pick. So, excuse me, the fact that they got six is not, I would take that over as opposed to Foley if you were told me those are the only two options I could have here. So between that and knowing that this is they're at number six, like you mentioned, the third time in 4 years, which frankly I don't think it's a bad thing because let's not forget the last two times that the Red Wings did pick at six. They got Philip Zadina and they got Moritz Seider. So to me, they've done quite well picking from that spot before, and knowing that there's going to be a good plethora of good available high caliber talent within those first six picks alone. The Red Wings, whether it be looking for the best player available or looking out what helps out a particular need, I think they're in as good a spot as you can ask for, given the fact that this wasn't a team that was not as bad as last year, but still nowhere near where they need to be competitively. And so with the year they had, this is a good spot for them to pick. And for your Steve Eisman, you have nothing to worry about. You've made a solid pick before from this spot, so you can do it again easily.
Yes, definitely. It's been done before. Eisman's been there and done that. So one more note, the Red Wings have signed 23-year-old defenseman Wyatt Newpower, as I mentioned in my opening statement, to an entry-level contract. Played last year with the AHL's Cleveland Monsters, only wound up with 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points total, 14 penalty minutes, just 14, and a team leading plus 10 last season with those Monsters. Low offensive production statistics, but to be honest, he's a plus 10's not bad. Only 14 penalty minutes. He played clean hockey last year.
He could be seen. I think he could be seen as someone that is not to rely upon as your top line productive defenseman, but someone you can fill in for easily good depth purposes on the back end of the rotation. So if he can be a third, fourth, or fifth line defenseman, I think that would be a pretty good ceiling for him.
Definitely. So that's Red Wings. Moving this along very quickly, like we've done last week. The Tigers, 4th place in the American League Central Division. Twins are losing, by the way, to the Orioles 3-1. The Tigers right now 23-32, just 9 games below 500. The Twins 10 games back, or 10.5 games back, 10 games under 500. The Twins still down 3-1, bottom 7 at Camden Yards. Orioles have a man on second and 2 out. Cologne pitching for Minnesota. Stewart at bat for Baltimore. Orioles have the worst record in Major League Baseball, by the way, again. But the Tigers, they lost 3 of 4 to the Cleveland Indians, and then they swept the New York Yankees. First time since 2014, I think, or at least won a series against the Yankees for the first time since 2014. And
yeah, it was the first time. It was the first time they had won a series at home against the Yankees since around August 2014.
Yeah, and then the last sweep against the Yankees came in 2000. Then I guess so. Yeah, there's that. And then they split the series, a 2-game series on American Family Field, with the Milwaukee Brewers. Brewers won 3-2 in 10 innings. Tigers won 10-7 just last night in a game where Matthew Boyd struggled again for the 4th straight outing in a row. But Tigers still hanging in 4th, making a little bit of progress. Yeah, Anthony P.A. Benman with a screw over again. Not exactly, Anthony. The Wings stayed at 6 overall. Yeah, Bettman. Yeah, he corrected the spelling there. But anyway, back to the. Let's go ahead and talk. Let's go ahead and talk about Matt Boyd. His last 4 starts, 20 and 2/3 innings pitched, 19 runs allowed, 18 of them earned on 25 hits, 9 walks, and 22 strikeouts, 5 home runs allowed included. And
by those numbers alone, it gives reason gives a good explanation, sums up everything with his performance as of late. Too many base hits, too many base runners. He's giving you enough strikeouts, but he's not being balanced enough in terms of limiting run production, having a very low to very non-existent whip. Someone you would expect to have those number of strikeouts, to have as many few to none as base runners as possible, but as you can see, that is not the case. I don't know if it's a matter of control, or he's not putting his pitches in the right spot, or batters. Again, it's not necessarily batters picking up signs, but able to guess the rhythm of his timing when he throws from the mound to the plate. Whether it is, it's just not working out for him right now, and he's got to find a way to figure that out, because it's very concerning, because this is a player that some were considered, hey, maybe the Tigers should have traded last year, and now you're wondering, did they wait too late, to sell the farm on him? So they took a risk keeping him, and so far it's not paying out to be a good payoff.
No, not at all for Boyd. No. Shahid Saeed wanted to comment on the Red Wings in the NHL Draft Lottery. If there's ever a year to pick 6, this is it. Well, just so you know, as we mentioned before, this is the 3rd time in 4 years that the Red Wings wound up with the 6th overall pick in the last 4 lotteries. 3 times in the last 4 years. So this is actually nothing new.
Yeah, but in terms of the year the pick says, I think he's talking about the perennial prospects that are available. Guys like Owen Power, who I suspect will be long gone by the time that the Red Wings pick 6. But he's one of the Owen Power from Michigan, by the way, defenseman from Michigan. He's seen as the likely number 1 overall pick, which so happens went to Buffalo in tonight's draft lottery. So he may very well be heading to Buffalo to become a Sabre. There's the players like William Eklund,
expected to be number 1.
Yeah, Simone Edvinsson, other players of that nature. One if not 2, could potentially fall to the Red Wings in that available spot at 6. So we could be seeing a similar situation to where the best player, or a player that they wanted that fit their need, it falls to them, just like what we saw with the Lions and Penei Sewell.
Yeah, Saeed wanted to also commented, no Lafreniere, Hughes or McDavid, etc. But at least we had Moritz Seider, Philip Zadina, and just last year, Lucas Raymond, on the next Andreas Athanasiou that I see in my eyes, at least.
Well, that's where you can take in consideration, the fact that the Red Wings are still being somewhat dependent upon Hakan Andersson, because he is the director of scouting, I believe, in terms of their European offices. So he gets to overlook some of the international talent that may not necessarily be as easily seen in North America, America and Canada region. So he had high praise for Lucas Raymond, and he also, again, one of the players I mentioned earlier of Simone Edvinsson, he had high remarks for him as well. So keep an eye on that. If the Red Wings are available to get him at 6, he could be seen as someone you could pair up in the defense, to be your 1 and 2 top tier blue liners, along with him and Seider for the next future. So that's something to take into consideration for that. That is, if Eisman wants to go with that mound or that route of strategy. But again, the possibilities are endless when you are in a position at 6.
Yes, absolutely. So, so that's Red Wings and that's Tigers. Of course, Tigers take on the Chicago White Sox, by the way, tomorrow night at 8:10. Casey Mize is going to take on Dallas Keuchel. That should be an interesting matchup, shouldn't it?
Very interesting. I think the White Sox, they're the top team in the division right now, and Keuchel is one of the most recognizable names, noteworthy names, I would say, in terms of pitching talent over the last few years. So he's probably one reason why they're at their spot in the division that they are right now. So it's very interesting to see how young Casey Mize handles a start of this caliber against middle of the season, or at least near the back end of the first half against a team at such a high point of the season that's in first place.
Yep, that should be an interesting matchup for the Tigers tomorrow night. A 4-game set at Guaranteed Rate Field. We're going to be looking forward to that one. Now, last but not least, our TMSTP Story Vault, which will fill up some time here. From Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag, of course, another instant classic, Mike Valenti's Ellen Problem. It's about his past with former co-host Terry Foster, who is already retired from 97, won the ticket. So here we go. Unless you have been living under a rock the last few weeks, you probably have heard the news about the Ellen DeGeneres show. And by the way, Ellen has stepped away from her show, by the way. She only hosts Ellen's Game of Games on NBC, by the way. 3 producers were fired from the daytime talk show on Monday after a BuzzFeed article detailed an abusive workplace on the set of one of the more popular shows on TV. A lot of the alleged misconduct on the set of Ellen's program has been vague. The star comedian didn't want people looking her in the eye. Staff was mentally abused by superiors, etc. But the details dripping out in the wake of the Ellen scandal seem to pale in comparison to revelations made by former 97 Won the Ticket host Terry Foster. Earlier today on his blog, as you may recall, Foster used to co-host the #1 rated sports show in Detroit, Valenti and Foster, with partner Mike Valenti. In August of 2016, Foster suffered a debilitating stroke that took him off the air for the rest of the year. He returned early in 2017 and only appeared for 3 months before retiring and accepting a buyout with the station, the radio station, that is. The circumstances surrounding Foster's departure were always questionable, as Foster stated at that time the decision was amicable, but we are learning now from TFOS that the parting was anything but. Based on a large number of texts, emails, Facebook posts Moss received, that is, from his readers back in 2017 when Foster returned to the studio, it was his opinion that Valenti never wanted Terry to return. He enjoyed hosting the program alone and made Foster's life miserable upon return from his near-death experience. In fact, I didn't buy any of the niceties or whatever that everyone was throwing around back in 2017 when Foster left. Moss had a couple sources telling him that Valenti had basically run Foster out of the job. He even wrote an article about it back on April 20th of 2017 titled "Terry Foster Retired and Mike Valenti Has Blood on His Hands." Imagine working with a guy for almost 15 years and not visiting him in the hospital after a major stroke. What kind of person is Valenti to do something like that? Moss made Foster my personal piñata for a decade and probably wrote 20 articles alone on his failed restaurant endeavors. But Moss had the decency to stop all of that once he got sick. Heck, Moss even texted Foster to get better after the stroke. What did Valenti and Mike Sullivan do? They mocked him, made fun of him for being slow. Their behavior was reprehensible then, and now that we know for a fact that this was causing Foster to get ill, you have to wonder what ramifications, if any, Valenti will face. Sullivan left the show recently so he could get golf balls driven off his nuts, so nothing can be done about that imbecile. It doesn't seem that anyone at Entercom cares. They just hired a guy, Enrico Beard, to basically replace Foster 3 years after the fact, who had his own workplace bullying issues himself. A former intern allegedly was physically threatened by Beard and mentally abused to the point where he was supposedly suspended, and 97-1 hires this guy and refuses to address the accusation. That's one Chris Castellani by name. Valenti bullies a stroke victim out of a gig, and Beard allegedly tells an unpaid kid, Chris Castellani again, he is going to see the back of his hand, quote unquote. Those two seem to deserve each other. Beilein and Rico do, yes. Since Powers refused to respond to the email Moss sent about Beard, Moss guesses he will just forward all this to Entercom's market manager, Debbie Kenyon, and their HR, human resources manager, Rhonda Brooks. They will see if anyone at the station wants to address these issues. That's the end of that article. So, of course, Terry Foster may not have been consistent over the years, over his tenure at 97-1, but there was just no reason for Mike Valenti, Ed, to verbally abuse him and just neglect him like that when Terry Foster has a stroke. Ed, go right ahead.
Well, and in some level of fairness, Foster didn't specifically or explicitly state that Mike was the one that he was referring to in his articles, where he essentially broke his silence of the aftermath of his stroke and what happened led to his departure in 97-1. But if you could put two and two together, it will be a pretty nice assumption and good fit to suggest that Valenti was exactly who Terry was talking about. And also, it doesn't surprise me when you consider the fact that, Valenti likes to play up the fact that he's this big, tough guy on the air, but, his off-air personality seems to suggest otherwise. And frankly, when you factor in and consider the fact that he's going to be partnered with someone like Rico Beard, who has his own detailed sort of skeletons in his own closet, you can argue almost that the two deserve each other, frankly. I had almost forgotten. Let you know how long I've stopped listening to that show, a program, and very seldom listen to it. I had forgotten that Sullivan had actually left the show, so it was actually good. So that way I don't have to hear his annoying lapdog-like voice on the air anymore. Practically, agreeing with almost everything that Mike says. So it's actually quite refreshing to not hear that on the radio anymore. But it's not surprising if any of this turned out to be true. It just seems right along with Mike's personality and, frankly, Rico's personality, if you were to ask me.
Yeah, even I started to feel bad about Terry Foster, and Chris Castellani had another
yeah, exactly. I mean, you can say whatever you want about you have a right to your opinion about whatever you may think of Foster professionally, but knowing the fact that he went through a severe, debilitating health crisis, one that could have threatened his life if need be, and knows that he has friends and family and people in this business and in his profession that do care about him and have legit concern for him, that was wishing him well, best of luck in his recovery and all that. You know for sure that he at least gotten much more well wishes and visits from those type of people than in regards to what he got from his own supposed co-workers, his closest of close families at 97-1. So it's unfortunate, it's sad, but it's not surprising, really.
Yeah. Say you wanted to comment again, isn't it always about ratings, especially since Valenti knows his pull on the station? Yep. Well, duh. I mean, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? Also wanted to comment more on the NHL draft. Yzerman did trade up to pick Vasilevsky in Tampa in the first round, so goalie is a goaltender an option? Two good prospects, Ed.
I would say no. I think goaltender may be the least more on the back end of what they need. I would be thinking more lines of, can you get the best available defenseman or forward winger? That would be my best bet. Because between Bernier and Geis, you may not be where you want at goaltender right now, but you're more than satisfied in what you got with those two.
Yeah, I think the Red Wings are already full on the goaltending. So so it's probably just the defense that needs to help the goaltending like it usually does. So yeah, there's that. All right, so that covers everything. About 9:33 here. Let's go to the closing statement. Ed, what are your thoughts? Or what's your closing statement? Ed, what's your closing statement?
Sorry about that. I was going to say that my closing statement is that the Red Wings are as good a spot they can be at the moment, knowing what they just added in terms of depth at the defenseman position with new power, and the fact that they didn't get completely screwed over in the draft lottery for once makes me think that this is all part of the patient process that Eisman has been preaching, going back to his retention of Jeff Blashill, now to seeing what we're going to see, not just with the draft, but also the upcoming offseason with cap space as well.
Yep. My closing statement, the Tigers are going to have to keep battling for at least fourth place, but they'll have to do something with Matt Boyd. But for the Red Wings, good for them for staying with the same number of the overall draft pick after the lottery. Pistons made a damn good hire. That's my closing statement. And Saeed, one more comment. Thanks, guys. Good show. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. Thank you for listening. And that is everything we've covered. Before we go, we want to remind everyone that this show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Sign up with the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire, and spread the word. That's for Stables Media. So the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Sign up with the referral code STABLES. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Ed, excellent job as always. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. We'll be back next week. On behalf of Frank Vasner and for Ed Smith, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow our show on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. And like our show on Facebook. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people, hit them with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe. Hustle and grind is next on Stables Media.